look, what I'd like to do first is focus on the domestic issues. That was obviously the bulk of the president's speech. And Tony, I'll start with you. What were the key points that you took away? And what were the positives? What were the negatives?
Key points, really mostly small ball, KT. We've heard it all before. It's his sixth year giving this type of speech, his fifth official State of the Union, and it's never called that the first time the president gives it. So it really is nothing that I think was shocking to anybody. He renewed the whole claim that by somehow raising the minimum wage, which only, by the way, 3% of Americans collect, we're going to somehow really resurrect this economy where we've had terrible growth. And that's the one area of the speech I've heard a lot of people criticizing the president. He's falsely claiming that we've had real economic growth. Now, look, we've had some quarters, particularly of late, that look better than others, but the overall growth in his 6 years has barely kept up with inflation, and that's why you've not seen people able to rise up in this type of economy. There's no wealth creation, there's no job creation, and that's done by the private sector, not government. We heard a lot more of that from the president last night, which I think a lot of people on the Hill from the Republican side certainly don't think is the solution. The other point I want to make quickly is this whole issue of unemployment benefits. I was surprised the president focused on it so much because the Democrats just negotiated unemployment benefits out of the most recent budget deal. If it was so important to him and his agenda, I'm surprised he allowed them to negotiate it out of that budget deal. So a lot of small ball, small potato stuff, but clearly things that he knows will resonate with his base, which he needs badly in 2014.
So, Tony, I take it you didn't like it, so I want to know, why were you even in Washington if it was such small ball? Hey,
well, I had high hopes, I guess,
yeah,
KT.
Okay, well,
you know, look,
yeah, we're now going to turn to the New Yorkers who see it big thing. All right, Jeannie, what did you think of the president's speech?
See, Tony was optimistic, like the president said he should be.
Yeah.
And that's because Tony's from Westchester, like I am. So,
okay.
You know, I think I have to agree with Tony, my friend from Westchester. It was, he gave a moderate series of proposals. We've heard most of them before, so there was nothing new there. A few things that surprised me domestically was that he waited, I think, until about 50 minutes in to even mention the Affordable Care Act. It came across to me like a commercial, sign up your mother, sign up your son. Yeah. It was kind of funny. And then he didn't mention the rollout, though, and the botched nature of that.
He didn't own up to it.
He didn't own up to it. And then I think there are serious fact-checking to be done, and I know everybody's doing it. I'm sure Tony's doing it, Basil's doing it, in terms of the numbers. We need the numbers, and I'm not sure we really have a sense that this thing is paying for itself yet, and if it is, he needs to show us the money. So that surprised me. Another small thing that surprised me was the fact that, given it was a year anniversary from Newtown and he made such a big deal about gun control and background checks, he gave very, very little mention. He mentioned Sandy Hook Elementary one time. It was a couple sentences, and kind of skirted over that. And I think that speaks to the fact he knows he's not getting background checks through this Congress. He knows he can't do it unilaterally. So those two things really surprised me on the domestic front.
Yeah, that's a good point. Let's listen to what the president did say about gun control.
I've seen the courage of parents, students, pastors, police officers all over this country who say, we are not afraid. And I intend to keep trying, with or without Congress, to help stop more tragedies from visiting innocent Americans in our movie theaters and our shopping malls or schools like Sandy Hook.
Good applause line, but, as Jeannie said, very unlikely to have anything like that go through. Let me ask you, though, to turn it a little bit of a different direction. Basil, both the president and the various rebuttals all talked about the middle class. That's the holy grail. Who gets the middle class? Because the middle class doesn't feel it's being served by anybody anymore. Now, what did you say to that? The president talked about it, but didn't seem to give any real hope. I mean, middle class wants jobs, but he really didn't talk much about it.
Well, it's interesting. If you even take it off the federal level and even go to a local level, here in New York City, we have a new mayor that's talked about progressive politics and supporting the middle class. Very few people can actually really define it. But it is it is an important line, and it is an important talking point. But one thing, and to sort of address something that Tony said, I agree. I will concede this to Tony's point. I will concede that the president should have stood up more for extension of unemployment insurance than he did. And that was disappointing. But he did talk about income inequality. If we talk about wealth, the fact that corporate profits are a bigger share of GDP than they ever have been, that Wall Street is doing extremely well. But I think talking about raising the minimum wage, which a lot of states have done as of this year. I think talking about extending unemployment insurance again, and I think pushing back a little bit to the extent that he can on cuts in food stamps are all geared toward getting people out of poverty and not into the middle class, but at least preventing them from falling further. The problem is that trying to get them into the middle class requires a whole lot of other stuff that I don't know if he was as concrete about as he should have been, but these are important talking points. I mean, look, even the folks gathered for the World Economic Forum in Davos are talking about income on a global scale, on a global scale, and how it undermines the global economy. So it's not just a local talk line; it's actually an international one.
You know what's so interesting, though, and you know, even if you agree with raising the minimum wage, which I happen to agree with, it's, I think, to the larger point, it's not going to solve the opportunity ladder or the income inequality problem. And that, to me, speaks to the small ball nature of this. Where was the discussion of entitlement reform, for example?
Yeah, there was
Where
no
was the
discussion
big...
He did not address entitlement.
He made a quick mention of it, but not a significant one.
Let's bring in Tony to this poor man out in the outside.
I know, I'm in the wilderness over here.
We're inside the Beltway. Nobody's inside
Although,
the Beltway.
thank you, Basil, for agreeing with me on something. I appreciate that.
My pleasure.
I feel the love. So look, I agree with Dr. Zaino. Income inequality is only addressed with a growing economy, not redistributing a small pie. That's where the president failed last night. He failed to discuss how he believes this economy can grow. And after 6 years, and Britt Hume made this point brilliantly last night on the Kelly File, KT, he's talking about his economy. You would have thought this may have been one of his first speeches he's given. For 6 years, essentially, his policies have relegated the middle class and working poor to a life of mediocrity and dependency because he's failed to grow the economy in a meaningful way. The one area to be optimistic, I will say I thought the president did very well last night, and I think we can use it as a key first step for this year to work in a bipartisan way, is serious tax reform. Let's repatriate corporate profits. Let's lower the barrier of taxes and regulation for businesses to create jobs for people in America to be able to grow their incomes and live the life they want to live. These are the types of conversations I think the president will find allies, particularly if he focuses on tax reform, but he can't go it alone. That was a really silly part of his speech. He has a phone and a pen. If you look at all these focus groups and polling, it's being very poorly received, as was his very lame defense of Obamacare, which still is wrought with peril.
Okay, quick final comments from everybody on Obamacare. Let's go to you, Basil.
It's a good bill. It's a good bill with flaws and a flawed implementation. No question about it. But I do think that he was right to challenge Republicans to, instead of just saying no to the bill and trying to repeal it, come up with some hard alternatives and actually do your job and legislate them.
Okay, Jenny?
Yeah, I think on Obamacare, I think we need numbers, and I think we need solid numbers from the administration. I mean, I am in favor of redefining health care. We need to fix health care, but we need numbers in, and I don't think we've gotten a clear sense of the numbers yet, and that's a problem.